Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you here to the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority for the Board of Commissioners meeting on the 20th of February, 2020. We'll go ahead and get this meeting started with a roll call. Ms. Dominique, if you'll help us with that.
Chairperson Scott Black.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Olivia Diaz. Commissioner Cheryl Davis. Commissioner Sharon Davis. Here. Commissioner Misha Hooks. Commissioner Tick Sagerbloom. Commissioner Dan K. Shaw. Here. Commissioner Lawrence Weekly. A quorum is present. We're in compliance with the Nevada Open Meeting Law.
Thank you, Dominique. If you can all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we will open the public comment portion of our meeting. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda today for possible discussion and possible action. If you wish to be heard, come to the speaker's podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your last name for the record. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation, this will be done by the chair of the board by majority vote. Then you would like to come and speak on this public comment? Do we have a microphone today?
Beatrice Turner. I'm here because the lady Fannie Owens that lived in Marble Manor had been there ever since when it was military housing, then turned over to public housing. And she passed about 3 weeks ago. And she had been in Marble Manor all that time and living in Marble Manor on Washington. And she passed away 3 weeks ago. And that's how long she had lived in Marble Manor, because she moved in with her husband when it was military housing. And then the Housing Authority took it over and made it public housing. And she still stayed there because her husband passed away, and she still stayed there. And I want to say that. And I want to say, since Misha Hooks can't seem to make her way to this board meeting every now and then, oh, she need to be replaced. And they need to put somebody that's going to come to the meetings. She just came to one meeting, and now she ain't here again. She needs to be replaced.
Is that Miss Owens on your shirt?
Yes, it is.
That's awesome. How old was she?
She was 88.
88. Thank you. I indirectly asked her, so I guess, yeah, I did break the code, didn't I? All right, whoops. Anyone else would like to speak during public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and we'll go to item number 3, approval of the minutes for the January 16th, 2020 meeting. For the record, I was not present at that meeting. I'll call for a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item number 4, approve the agenda with the inclusion of any emergency items and deletion of any items. The agenda will be approved as presented, or will we be amending this agenda, Mr. Williams?
No amendments to the consent agenda.
No, this is for the full agenda. Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for item number 4.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. We'll go on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be taken in one vote. Are there any comments or questions from the board relative to the consent agenda and these items that it contains? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We'll move on to item number 5, approval of request to write off outstanding tenant accounts, receivable, vacated accounts for period ending December 31, 2019. turn that over to Mr. Williams.
That was in the consent agenda.
Oh, it was, I'm sorry. That's right, my apologies. Okay, so we're going to item number 6, under section 3, the acknowledgement of our departed. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairperson, we only have one departed, Miss Efafina Cribbs, resident at Arthur Sartini Plaza.
We have Miss Owens as well, if we can, Thaddeus Owens.
And Miss Owens from Marble Manor.
Okay. All right, if you'll all join me in a moment of silence and reflection for these individuals. Thank you very much. This time we'll go to item number 7. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, staff would like to pull this item from the agenda at this time.
Okay. And does that require a vote? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Number 8, approve memorandum of understanding with Bryn Shore to be master developer of Marble Manor with SNRHA.
Mr. Chairperson, the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority to lead housing renewal and economic revitalization in historic West Side and improve the quality of its affordable housing portfolio issued an RFP to partner with a master developer for planning and implementing a redevelopment activity for the Marble Manor public housing community. The proposed master developer partner must have demonstrated experience for planning and redevelopment of public and affordable housing using public housing resources leveraged with non-public housing resources. The proposed master developer partner specifically should have demonstrated experience utilizing conventional financing such as low-income housing tax credits, private debt financing, Federal Home Loan Bank Affordable Housing Program, HUD's Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, and Section 18, along with TIF financing and other public, charitable, or private funding mechanisms. The proposed master developer will have proved through its submittal to the RFP process the qualifications necessary to implement a comprehensive revitalization strategy for Marble Manor. This strategy will catalyze public and private investment in and around the site to include cultural, educational, civic engagement activities that not only will revitalize the neighborhood, but will rejuvenate residents in their historic West Side community. The proposed master developer will demonstrate its success in implementing large-scale redevelopment plans that include mixed income, mixed finance, mixed uses consistent with the UNLV 100 plan for the historic West Side community, reported out on May 2016, and the City of Las Vegas Downtown Master Plan Vision for 2045. The plan to be considered must be neighborhood-focused and include residential and non-residential uses and replacement of Marble Manor public housing units at 1-for-1 ratio with subsidized units integrated into the mixed income development, which will also include green and recreational space and a community center. The proposed master developer that the staff is presenting for approval to the board is Bryn Shore. Bryn Shore was the highest rated responder to the request for qualifications. Therefore, the executive director is asking for the approval with his or her designee to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Bryn Shore to govern our relationship prior to entering into a full master development agreement, which will also be submitted to the board for approval. That will be more fully describe the roles, responsibilities, and rights and compensations of this agreement. In addition to introducing this item, we have 4 individuals from Bryn Shore Development Team who will give a presentation to back up and support their submittal of the RFP and take answers from the commission, and also take answers from the commission.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll invite those individuals forward from Bryn Shore. Thank you in advance for the thorough information that you've provided for us, and look forward to your presentation, and we'll turn it over to the board for questions once you conclude your presentation. And the public.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the time. Presentation from our Bryn Shore crew. I apologize if I'm a little nasal. I'm on a sinus infection, so if I speak too softly, please let me know. We're very happy to be here today, and we appreciate very much the opportunity to present the project, to present ourselves to you and the project to you. So I'll be briefly giving you an overview of Bryn Shore, and then some of my folks will be giving you some more detailed information on what our presentation or proposal is. Brinshore is a development company that I started with my partner 25 years ago. We work nationally now in 18 states. We've done over 7,500 units of housing in approximately 100 communities around the country. And we use all different sorts of programs. Now we are working with CNI, with neighborhood-based developments. We've done up 6 projects and redeveloped many communities around the country. You'll see that our relationships with other housing authorities is extensive. It ranges from the Chicago Housing Authority, of course, we've done a great deal of work, to Kansas City, Indianapolis, Waco, Texas, and Omaha, Nebraska, and others. Give you an idea of some of the work that we've done with these pictures. One of the things that we believe is that architecture is important, that it sets a tone for a neighborhood. It sends a feeling of importance, and it helps to attract people of all different kinds of backgrounds and histories. We also believe that you can see if the pointer works. You can see that in all of our developments, we think it's very important to be incorporating green space, things like community gardens, urban farms, and things that give children opportunities to enjoy their surroundings. What you see here is an urban farm in one of our developments. This development in Omaha here is what we call an accelerator. That's a large banquet and space with a big plaza, and across the street from that is a pool, recreation facility, and community center for the 75 North neighborhood in Omaha. Here in downtown, in South Side neighborhood of Chicago, we took an old public housing project and took out the middle section and put in an arts facility that is used pretty much 12 hours a day with students. It's programmed by people from the University of Chicago that donate their time to do arts activities and musical activities for the residents of the housing project. The team here that's be working on this on a regular basis, myself, boy, that's an awfully young picture. I think I need to keep that one around. Didn't realize. We haven't changed it in a while. I guess that's why they're taking pictures next week. Whitney Weller's the senior vice president. She runs our Los Angeles office. John Majors is our vice president and runs our Atlanta office, but he also comes from purpose-built communities and has worked to redevelop neighborhoods in many communities around the country. He will be here to tell you a bit more about himself and what he's done. And Maisha Williams is a neighborhood consultant for us and has a strong history and relationship in these communities. Our home office and actually in other offices around the country support the work we do. We have a director of finance who works all of our financing structures. We have a construction department. We have an individual, Peter Levevy, who's an expert in HUD programs and HUD financings. And we have a lot of support staff. Basically, we have 25 people in 7 offices, I think, at this point. I will turn this over to Whitney.
Good afternoon, board chairman and the board and commissioners and the community who's out in force, which is great. So just talking a little bit, highlighting some of our projects west, which is where I'm focused. Right now I'm on the West Coast, but focused in Arizona, California, and Salt Lake City. Primarily, my focus will be Salt Lake City and this project here in Nevada, which is exciting. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about our initial concept and vision for the site. This is really evolved from the requirements in the RFP, RFQ, request for qualifications, as well as our understanding of the community and conversations with folks in the community. So this particular image we want to show, because we like to show the site in context. So the area that's popped up is Marble Manor, and that's the proposal that, or the concept that we're going to talk about today. And then, as you can see, we've kind of set it into the historic West Side neighborhood. What you see in sort of the light colors around on each side of the highway is the 100 plan. So we really, we studied that plan, we put it onto our map, so we really understood what the community and the city are, see as their future here in this community and this particular location. So that's just kind of a highlight. We're going to move here. So now we have sort of the site plan right in front of us in sort of the brighter colors in the middle. And then again, the 100 plan that surrounds it and trying to sort of integrate what our vision is with the 100 plan. We think that's very important. A lot of history here in this community, and we want to respect that, and we want to work with that as we move forward. And both John and Maisha will talk a little bit about how we do that. So just to highlight, so the images around are just kind of giving you a snapshot of what these particular land uses could be. And the real goal here was to integrate and reconnect these large blocks back into the community and really respect what's happening on the north, south, east, and west, and be thoughtful about the fact that on the north we have single-family homes. So the yellow color is the lowest density housing. So we wanted to sort of interact with what's happening across the street, not put large-scale buildings immediately across from the existing neighborhood. And then as we get, then there's kind of I think I have a pointer here. Oh, I do. Then this color, kind of this peachy color, this is a good example where we're looking at maybe having single-family duplex homes that could be attached, might not be attached, and creating a really nice feel around a community block where these green spaces are both public and have areas that are private for the residents. And then we move into a little bit higher density in this darker orange color, which is adjacent to the existing kind of commercial light industrial area to the south. So we wanted to be thoughtful again about what we're adjacent to. But you can see all these kind of green lines. There's a green line going through the middle. And of course, here's the Boys and Girls Club on Martin Luther King Drive and then Washington. And really wanting to tie this development together from side to side as well as back into the community, both along Washington and these kind of cross connectors within the blocks that'll connect back to this, hopefully this new development in the Moulin Rouge area. And also over on this side, thinking about the Boys and Girls Club and how can we interact with what they're doing and help support their activities. So we really created kind of a nice open green space where there can be soccer fields and program space for the Boys and Girls Club, and really try to have kind of joint use spaces that will draw families into this community instead of sort of shutting everybody out. And then right down the middle we're calling this kind of our interconnector pavilions, where we have small buildings that can be used for, one of them could be a space for dance classes and cooking programs. Another could be the management space, where we have a community room where residents can use the room for events and celebrations. And that really helps connect the community back up into the north area, as well as to future development to the south. And then these cross directions, connect this part of the community to this part, so that we're really trying to create a cohesive, integrated community with options, housing options for a wide range of families. And we'll talk a little bit about, what the makeup will be of the families and the units. But the idea is this is really a very preliminary concept that will now take out, conversations with the Housing Authority and take out into the community and all the stakeholders in this neighborhood. So I'm going to turn it over to John, who will talk a little bit about how that will all play out. The pointer at the top. Yes, and Maisha, yes.
All right, can everybody hear me? So I try not to read from the slides, and so what you see up here is the Brenshaw approach, and if you all will allow me, I will give you all a little bit of the John Majors approach to approaching neighborhoods and community development. I always come into opportunities like this and think about 20 years from now, I want a young person walking across the stage at Yale or Harvard or Morehouse College or Spelman College or any of these places, and so well poised for success in the world that someone in the audience says, that's a really, really impressive young person. And I want someone sitting next to them to say, of course, that young person grew up in Marble Manor. All those kids do great. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case now, but I see our work, everyone in this room, making that a reality over the next 20 years. And that young person being a person who looks just like the young kids growing up in Marble Manor today. And so that goes far beyond housing. So one of the things that you'll see that's pretty consistent with all of the developments that Brenshaw is involved in is this concept of HEART, which is sort of a cute acronym, but it's got a lot of meaning behind it. So not only housing, but housing with heart. And so that's partnerships and programming across a range of health, education, arts, recreation, and technology. Now, this would absolutely be a collaborative process where we would work with the housing authority, we would work with the residents, we would work with the community leaders to identify what are the right programs and partnerships to put in place. But just to go through these very quickly, some of the ideas we had that sort of excited us and stood out to us as we started thinking about this opportunity. So under health, the University of Nevada Extension Service, they've got something they call social horticulture, which is actually figuring out how to use gardening as a way to build community. They even do something called gardening as therapy. A lot of times, life's just rough, right, for everybody. And so there are ways that you can use gardening to address trauma. So we thought that was something that would be really interesting and something that from a health perspective, we could partner with them. We would absolutely work with everyone here and everyone in the room. If that's not the right program, that's not the right partner, let's find the right set of programs and partners. From the education perspective, so I did some of the research on Wendell Williams, and I don't mean to be inflammatory. I'm certainly not trying to upset anybody. Wendell Williams, I believe, in terms of there are 341 elementary schools in the state of Nevada. Wendell Williams is ranked 332nd by test score. So that's bottom 3%. So one of the first things we would want to do is meet with the district, meet with the leadership and say, what is, if we're going to redevelop this entire area, this entire site, what is it that redevelopment can do to be a catalyst and a jumpstart to help some of the student outcomes at Wendell Williams? I know you all are the housing authority. You might say, well, this is the housing authority. What do we have to do with education? That's where my research shows that's where your students are zoned to go to school. In terms of arts, we all know that arts are so important from just a cultural perspective of being able to learn to express yourself, express your feelings. So one of the things I just did some research, I found the West Las Vegas Art Center has a tremendous dance program. I called the executive director and I said, listen, you know, this was way when we were just singing, I said, I work for a group called Brenshaw. We're just thinking about applying to redevelop Marble Manor. If we were to do that and if we were to win that opportunity, do you think you could see an area where, where the West Las Vegas Art Center and Marble Manor could work together? And she said one of the things is that it's a little bit of a distance from Marble Manor to the West Las Vegas Art Center. So as Whitney was talking about some of those pavilions, so if we use one of those pavilions as a dance studio, she could actually bring some of the classes from the West Las Vegas Art Center right there to Marble Manor so that kids wouldn't have to walk as far. Catch back up. Sorry, guys. Recreation. So the obvious one for us as we look at this, the Agassiz Boys and Girls Club is right there. So I'll share with you all very quickly. Earlier this week, I was in Omaha. In Omaha, South Omaha has a very strong immigrant population, and so they've got a soccer program there that's run by these two brothers from Ghana, and they introduced me this week to the top 17-year-old soccer player in the state of Nebraska, came out of Southside Terrace in the Omaha Housing Authority. And not only is it great, this kid is 17, he's got actually an offer to go pro, but they're trying to get him to go to college instead. Now that's great, but more important to me at least is that when the kids there are having a challenge in school and the teachers are trying to get through to the kid, you know what they do? They say, I'm going to call Coach O, who's their soccer coach. And the kids straighten up immediately because they don't want to have any issues with their soccer coach. I think you absolutely have those sorts of opportunities here with the Agassiz Boys and Girls Club. And then from a technology perspective, this one is literally close to my heart, no pun intended. This is my story. When I was 23, I wrote software for IBM. That was my first job out of college. I had a very good life. I grew up in the 19th Ward of Rochester, New York. My dad was a security guard for Eastman Kodak. There's no reason that I should have gone to Morehouse College, been able to, get a job at IBM and have this really great life, but for the fact that when I was 9 years old, my dad bought the family a computer. And I literally sat in the back room and taught myself how to write software. And tell you how old I was trying to rewrite a game called One-on-One, Dr. J versus Larry Bird. So a lot of people in this room are probably too young to even know who those people are. But I taught myself how to write computer software by literally doing it on a computer. And we had computers at school, but you could only get a few minutes a week on the computer. So one of the things we do in a lot of the areas where we are redeveloping the housing, we'll bring in a technology lab to make sure that all the kids have access to the technology right there. And they can have, you hear about guys who go pro playing basketball, and they'll tell a story about they made friends with the janitor, and the janitor opened up the gym and they shot 1,000 jump shots every day before they went to school. This was my 1,000 jump shots. And for a lot of kids in these neighborhoods, we need to give them those same opportunities. So how do we do that? That's the big question, the process. So I'm going to ask Maisha to help us out with, we're going to tag team sort of, because I'll talk about from a high level, and then Maisha can talk about from on the ground here in Las Vegas, how do we get this done? So the first thing we're going to do is sit down with you all, and we're going to come up with a plan. Who are the people that we need to sit down with and have meetings with and figure out how do we figure out who are those program partners, who are the people we need to be having the conversations with. And Maisha, you want to talk a little bit about specifically some of your relationships here? And
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maisha Williams with MYS Project Management. So I'm actually a small business owner here in Nevada. We have been in business now for 5 years, and our expertise is project management. What this means is we're working with stakeholders at different levels to achieve a shared vision or goal. And so we see that working really well here because we're not the development people. We're not the experts. We're not the ones that live at Marble Manor, but we are the ones that can hopefully bridge all of those stakeholders together to find a common goal and a common vision and be able to help make that happen. So from a facilitation standpoint, I'm here locally to help communicate with the development team, to help communicate with the authority, to help communicate with the community and act as a liaison between those groups. Separately, my passion is here. I take time away from the paid work that I do to volunteer in this community. I'm a vice chair for the Commission on Minority Affairs, and we have 7 areas of focus within the commission, and one of those is housing. So this is near and dear to my heart to make sure that the people and the residents of Nevada are taken care of, that the community is able to work with the systems that we have in place, and that people's voices are heard. So I think what John is pointing to here in the first slide is our intention for the first 90 days is to really listen. So it's not about what I want to happen. It's not about what any one person wants to happen. It's listening to hear what are the shared visions and taking the time to really bring in that information and then put a plan to do something with it.
so step 1 is listen. Step 2 is collaborate. When we talk about making it special, so all the things that we talked about from heart and working with all the potential activities and programs and partners, but really once we hear some of that vision, how do we work together? How do we think through, how do we realize that vision? And this, I guess, a third to last bullet point, finding the team of partners and philanthropists. So I just want to give you all an example. So one of the things that all the experts will tell you, if you want to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty, education is the key to that, and that's a housing guy saying that education is the key to that, and early learning. So this bottom left-hand picture there, early learning, high-quality early learning where kids are learning language and literacy. The challenge is, at least, and these are Atlanta numbers, so the numbers here may even be higher, high-quality early learning to that magnitude costs about $18,000 a year to provide per kid. That's $1,500 a month. The families who need it the most can't afford that for the most part. So oftentimes, in order for this work to be successful, you've got to bring in philanthropic partners who say, you know what, this work is really important enough that we need to make this happen for the future of these kids. And so that's a big part of it. How do we all work together to put together the story so that we can attract that degree of philanthropy? But all this is collaborating and working together. Did you want to hit this, Mahesh? Okay. This is a big piece, creating local jobs. So one of the things that I will tell you that is always, always, always going to be particularly poignant for these redevelopment projects is that people see construction equipment out there and they say, wow, somebody's getting jobs, someone's getting construction contracts, why isn't it us? Why isn't it people who look like us? We just can't let that happen. We have to do everything that we can to partner with nonprofits, if that means helping people get into job training programs, if that means helping people learn how to become an electrician's apprentice so that they can get one of the jobs on the site. The good news is we've got a couple of years before any construction actually takes place, so we've got some time to put some of those training programs in place. When we start working with small businesses, some of the things that we see are things like being able to get connected to banking institutions so that they can meet their payroll, right? So like you might only get paid every 60 or 90 days, but you got to pay your guys who are out there working on the job every 14 days. And if you're a small business, that can break you, right? Or you just can't go after the contract. So there are ways that as a developer, we can force our general contractors to work with small businesses to help them solve some of those issues. But if you don't do it, it won't happen. And so we are absolutely committed to that, as evidenced by some of our successes, and you can read these, public housing residents who have gotten jobs on Brinshore developments throughout the country, and they've done a good job. And so on the next development, they were brought along as well. And so then they actually, some of them continue to work on construction jobs. So why our team? Just hitting these again. I don't need to hit all of them, but the public-private partnerships, the biggest word there is partnership. And then I'll go all the way to the other side, the long-term presence. So Nevada is strategically important for Brinshore. We own a lot of the units that we've developed over the past 25 years. This is an area that's important to us, and we're not going anywhere, whether you like it or not. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. So at this time, we have a large number of folks here today to, of course, learn about what we're proposing. I'd like to turn it over to the board at this time for any questions for the Brinshore team. So don't go away too far, Brinshore folks, in case. All right. Questions from the board for these folks relative to the presentation or anything that we'd like to get more information on? Commissioner Weekly?
Thank you. So I'd like to start by asking, you spoke about your, well, I'll get into the listening and learning next, your shared vision, but I see you did some of your homework. You went and studied the community a bit and went and learned some of the resources that we have around some of the adjacent areas that you're talking about. In your listening and learning, what's your strategy in terms of a community resident type survey? I mean, is this a part of your listening and learning where you plan to do like town hall meetings, or what's the whole strategy as it relates to your listening and learning, and what type of successes that you use or strategies that you used in some of your previous locations?
We usually start with doing things in person. Surveys are often difficult to glean information from unless you've refined what you're asking. So usually in surveys, the information is too broad. So we usually start with what you call town hall meetings. key stakeholders in the meetings to talk about specific topics. And so, and then we usually do things like let those people vote on things that are most important to them, so we get an idea of what people are thinking and what is most important to them and what their ideas are. And then we might refine it if a survey is appropriate.
And then what's your plan in terms of collaborating with the staff here at the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority and its board as it relates to many of the residents where there has been, in my opinion, a level of fear that's been set in many of these residents who feel as if they're either going to be evicted next year or at the end of this year. Many of them are going to be displaced or relocated somewhere but not have an opportunity to come back into their neighborhood that they've become accustomed to. What is your thoughts on your communications with the staff as it relates to communicating that out to the residents, who I think is probably the number one priority here?
Yeah, that's really common, that, and rightfully so, that people are concerned that there's change in how are we going to fit in. Remember that we're not setting that agenda. The Housing Authority really sets the agenda for the number of units that'll be back on site and the opportunities in other communities if people want to take the vouchers and go live somewhere else. That's really going to be set by them. So we'll take direction from our partners, and that's what this is a partner, structured as a partnership, to figure out exactly how we're communicating with folks and to make sure that they understand what has been determined. And then what usually happens at some point is the residents are surveyed. That's when they're surveyed. What do you prefer? Do you want to live back on site? Do you want to live somewhere else? Do you want, here's your options of things that can happen as a result of the development process. But we don't, we participate in that, and we help to structure those conversations, but that agenda is usually set by you guys.
Sure. So one thing I would say on that I have found working across the country is that communication styles, desires vary across residents often. So oftentimes nowadays, younger residents are like, I don't want to see a newsletter. Don't, kind of print anything out. Send it to me on text. Send me a Facebook link, frequently asked questions or something like that. And then sometimes older residents actually want a piece of paper, and they want someone to come and deliver them a piece of paper. Sometimes they want somebody to even sit down with them and say, hey, here's what's in this, and talk to them through that. So I think it's a variety of communication methodologies, and we'll work with the staff and with the resident leadership to figure out how to get that mix right.
Mr. Weekly, can you turn your microphone? I apologize. Thank you very much.
And over the years, I've heard that over and over and over. I'd like to know data that you all have that you could provide so that we can see it and read it and dissect it ourselves. I'd be interested in knowing that. I'm very familiar with, I got residents, well, not residents, but family members that live in Atlanta, and then just kind of researching and doing a little bit more on your company here, learning a little bit, how did you guys do your outreach with residents over in Illinois, and how did you bring those entities together as it relates to the training and ensuring that, folks were able to achieve employment opportunities that were real wages,
Right.
opposed to minimum wages.
All right, so it's hard. It is difficult, but what becomes is it a commitment to the community, or is it lip service? I mean, there's Section 3 requirements and there are MBW requirements in a lot of communities. Some are targets, some are required, some are hard targets, and generally, we will give you the statistics incidentally. We keep them on all of our projects of how many Section 3 hires, what kind of hiring there is, what's MBWB hiring, what portions of the contracts. But what it amounts to is some of what John said is that you can't expect in a large-scale development to have a neighborhood electrician who's qualified but can only do 3 units or 10 units at a time think they'll take a contract of whatever, I don't know what the phases will be, but 100 units. So you have to do things like split the contracts up. You have to have fairs in the neighborhood where you have the plans there. They can come and look at them and get copies of them and encourage them to bid, support them with the bids. If their bids are off, our people go back and say, you know, your bids are off, and try to help them work through why are they off and whether there's a way to get them to have a piece of the contract. And then you have to help fund them. I mean, like John said before, you get paid in cycles in these developments. It's usually 30 days once you get started or 45 days, but they're paying every 2 weeks. And sometimes they get ahead and they're actually 60 days behind from the time they're working. So you have to figure out mechanisms to help them get paid. And then for Section 3 hires, there have to be organizations within the community that help to vet who qualifies for Section 3, what kinds of businesses. And we've done things like simply requiring all of our contractors to hire Section 3 folks, and we keep track of that, and then monitor who the people are on their payroll and who gets added, and they have to add a certain number of them. To help them, in the other extreme is we help them create businesses. So depending on the projects, like in some of our larger scale projects where there's going to be business for a long period of time, we've helped people start cleaning businesses or landscaping businesses, other kinds of companies that can give them an opportunity to have ownership, build some equity while having a steady stream of opportunity within that development. So I'll share that information with you of what our numbers are and how we've succeeded. And I will tell you, it does take a level of commitment to make sure that happens, but it's worthwhile.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. And finally, my final question here to you is that you did say it'll be time before we even get to that level in this process here. And I'd be interested in just kind of hearing more what this board has to say, because there was a differential in the bidding between your group and the next group that came in second place. And I'd be interested in knowing kind of what was that all about in terms of what made you fare at a much greater level than the second place bidder. That has nothing to do with, well, it has a lot to do with you, but to those that reviewed the process. But finally, I'd like to see your data in terms of how do you all deal with, because I know that you all, according to some stuff that I read, some of your properties, and I'm not sure if you're going off of a federal guideline, in which I'm still getting some legal opinions on how that works. I know that they have an issue here in Southern Nevada, and we have some folks from the Department of Justice working on this. But as it relates to individuals, because I understand that there was a young man who made a mistake when he was around 18 years of age, came home, couldn't go back to his neighborhood, but went to college, earned his degree, and became a successful law-abiding citizen. And I guess my question to you is, do you all work to help those type of individuals who I believe in second chances deserve an opportunity to come back to the neighborhood, or are you one of those agencies that kind of hide behind that law and just say, well, it's a federal thing and it has nothing to do with us?
Well, you did your homework. So that situation, and it was really quite instructive for me, because what had happened was we used to have tenant selection plans are approved by the housing authorities, but they really come from us. And so originally it was people that had a criminal record of felonies, they were exempt from the projects for 20 years. And then we made it 10 years, and then we lowered it to 5 years. Interestingly and unfortunately, our management company didn't execute the tenant selection plan properly in that case. And I can't tell you that, I am all that smart when it comes to this, because I didn't really understand all the implications of it. I mean, when you say 5 years, 5 years is it 5 years from conviction? Is it 5 years from a release? What level? I mean, different crimes are different. Felonies have very different influences in the community. Age has a different influence in the community. So we started to study this, and I think that we've set on a company policy, which may or may not change, but it's basically 3 years from release. It's 5 years from conviction, 2 years from release, with extenuating circumstances. And the real issue there is, do they get back into the community? Do they have a support structure? Are they getting services? Do they have a job? And we work with them. So it's just a reality. I don't know what the levels of folks that are incarcerated and released in this community are. I know in Chicago and in Illinois, there's 27,000 a year. It's impossible to deal with it. So we'll do our job to incorporate them, while at the same time protecting the people that live in the development. Because believe me, we've talked to our residents. If you ask the residents sometimes, they'll say, no, we don't want it. We don't want people who've been, convicted of certain things. But there's a balancing act there. And it was embarrassing. I mean, it wasn't our fault in that our management company did it, but we're responsible for them. So we took care of it. And the individual who we settled with was a really wonderful guy. I mean, we settled with him. He said, it wasn't really the issue with me of getting money or it's just that I did do something, positive, and I was unable to move into a neighborhood, and that was wrong. Yeah.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes, I have several questions, so I hope you'll bear with me. If we enter into this agreement, I guess one of my first questions is, how much skin do you have in the game compared to the housing authority's skin in the game?
I think the structure of the agreement is that the housing authority funds 65% of the pre-development of each phase, and we fund 35% of the pre-development of the phase. And I have, these two folks and myself and my other staff that'll probably work for 2 years on a project before we get to a financial closing. So we're gonna have a lot of skin in the game.
And are your fees included in that 35%?
No, we don't take fees in pre-development. The fees come out of the closings of the development.
Okay.
Then they're split with the housing authority.
And who has the power to select contractors?
That's a joint a joint approval process. In the agreement, in the memorandum of understanding, it's, we'll come to a mutual decision. If there's not an agreement, then, look, if there's not an agreement, we're not going forward. So, I mean, there's no way we can then say to the housing authority, no, we're choosing this person, I don't care what you say, because you're providing, resources and Section 8 vouchers and all sorts of things to the project. So we find an agreement. Now, where there can be real disagreement is in the operation of the property. Once the property's closed, we are the managing member, and we generally have responsibilities because we've provided most of the guarantees. And in that case, there's mediation and arbitration. But I will tell you, in 25 years and 82 projects, and partners on almost all the projects, we've never had an issue. Not that it can't happen, but.
Okay, which answers another one of my questions. In this particular case, the way you have this laid out, you have some commercial, some residential. Does that mean you're going to have two separate management operations and two separate management companies?
Probably, unless the management company we work with has commercial capacity. Our staff also has commercial capacity, so we have people on staff that have done commercial leasing and commercial operations. I don't think they'll manage here, but they'll oversee.
Okay. Then in your submittal, the big 3-ring binder, you had, as part of your architectural team, you had Bob Feldon and his group. Is that just for local representation, or do you use your own people and they just review what?
Yes, so we have, that's exactly right. We brought in KTGY, who's, a larger, more national, done a lot of affordable housing as kind of our master planning, master architect. And then we brought in Robert Fielden as our local architect who's, worked with the housing authority, been in, working in this community for many, many, many years. But I think that there's been possibly a change in the local architect that we're still talking to the housing authority about.
There will be a local architect.
Yes.
It's just a question of who it will be, and that has to be finalized. That we have to work through that.
Right, and we would,
The answers to your questions of what happens.
right. And so we would work with somebody who we all agreed was the right choice for this particular project.
How is your group set up to do value engineering with those people?
Value engineering, did you just say post?
Pre.
Pre. So we have a construction company and construction department and a construction management group. So whenever we do projects, we work with the architect. Generally, at this point, will value engineer upfront to some degree, but you never know, because that's what happens, is you come up to, the project is over budget and you have to cut back. And then our staff will work with the architects, and we'll work as a team to decide what goes, what stays. I mean, it's a difficult balance, because normally when you make value engineering decisions, it is a decision of quality of the product. So sometimes instead of it being a 20-year roof, you put a 15-year roof on. Then you have to make plans for replacing that roof in 15 years. You can't just stick your head in the sand and say, I put a slightly less, lower quality product in because I need it to save money. You have to start to put into the replacement reserve enough money to pay for that in 15 or 20 years. So that's how we do it.
Has your group ever done a project in Phoenix, Tucson, or Las Vegas in the Southwest?
We've not completed a project in those phases, other than work that we've done on a smaller scale in Utah. But other than that, we have not completed a project in those markets.
And would your group have any problem with our side having an owner's rep that reviews,
Of course not.
along with you, those plans and value engineering?
We encourage that. If that's what makes you comfortable, maybe you do that for the first phase or two until you're comfortable. That happens. It's not uncommon to happen, and generally we welcome that.
Okay. All right. You mentioned you've done work in Utah. Has the project in Salt Lake been completed?
No, it's going to close in about 2 months. We're going to start construction in a few months.
Okay. How do you handle change orders? I don't, by the way.
Other than rejecting them?
Yes, that's, I was gonna say, there are none in my world, there are none. So,
Well, we do have a project in Denver that has no change orders. I keep asking and
that
it's,
means you haven't started it, is that what you're saying?
no, it's 60% completed. I keep asking the construction management folks, what's happening? This is impossible. Change orders, that really requires the expertise of not only the architect, but our people, because that's always a debate. And how good your architectural drawings are will often depend on whether you're right or wrong on the change orders. We tend to work with construction companies that have great reputations and don't try to make their living off of change orders. And that we've had a great deal of success for that in different parts of the country. But generally, it's a question of, we get an RFI for looking for information on a certain subject. It's looked at, it's questioned, they'll say this is a change, we'll have a debate, and we'll have a settlement with the contractor. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes we push back and say absolutely not, because it's clear here. Sometimes we're off, but I would say in all the projects that we've done, the contingency gets used on almost all the projects, but I can only think of a handful where we have to have contributed part of the fee or some money to make the project complete.
From my point of view, I think one of the areas that has been lacking is management of the projects. So I'd be very interested in your evaluation when it comes to that point of management companies and their capabilities, and involving this board in that process, and what that looks like in comparison to other communities that you work in, and how you would and what your process is in supervising and training those management companies to your method of oversight and management.
Well, we'll happily get back to the commissioners in conjunction with Chad and his staff about how we'll go through that process. In terms of monitoring on an ongoing basis, we have an asset management staff. They visit the sites usually physically once a year. If they're on a watch list, it's twice a year. But every month they monitor activity at the sites, collections and payables, and we make changes on a very rapid basis. And they know how we do budgeting. They know how we get information back on variances, on line items. And then all that information comes to me. I still see every month's every detail of every project, so we're not that big yet. And that's the way you do it. It's a meat and potatoes business when it comes to operations. You have to be looking for where things are failing and fix them fast.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Other questions? Commissioner Sharon Davis?
Okay. My question is, the architect of how you building it, will it be the same amount of housing that is there now? Okay, you taking Marble Manor, it's a block. In your print, it's like a circle where Marble Manor will be what the housing is now. Will it be the same amount of apartments or whatever in that block?
Who would take that?
Apologize, I was talking to Mr. Shaw. Can you repeat that question, Ms.
Okay.
Davis?
In the architect of, you're taking Marble Manor, you're taking that block of land. And in our, what we see is the yellow is the part that would be still Marble Manor, but the other parts is affordable housing, is homes, is other things. Will that house as many houses is there now?
So as I understand the question is, will we do a one-to-one replacement of the number of
Yes.
units? And the short answer is yes. And what we are going to direct this development team to do is do a one-to-one replacement of the exact number of bedroom units
Okay.
that are on that site. And
Okay.
how we offset that because of the subsidy of those units is to increase the density on our units. Right now, I believe there's 220 units on Marble Manor.
Okay.
And we're looking at least at a minimum 400 units, and we'll offset that by mixed income.
Okay, that'll be mixed income, so it'll be all mixed, okay. I understand that, I haven't been in Las Vegas a long, long time, but most of the housing is low. The Marble Manor at this particular time is low row, I call low row, that means one level. Now, how many levels are you going to make now, Marble Manor? Now you're changing the whole structure, the idea of their living, to me. How many stories can you build in the city of Las Vegas? Because it's no high rises here for, housing people like, housing.
So I'll answer that question. So currently, that particular property is zoned R5, I believe, but we're only looking at R4, which would be 4 levels up, so that we
Okay.
can get that density. And based on the 100 plan, there was a study that in that area, there used to be residential levels up to R4. And so we would just be following the 100 plan based on that study of bringing that density.
Okay, now, I got another question. I'm actually from Chicago, and I remember tearing down Robert Taylor, all of that. Okay, we know that you can't put a bunch of people in one spot. That don't work, okay? So in making your structure, you're gonna have families that have 4 or 5 kids on the 4th floor or the 5th floor. Will that work? What they're used to doing is just going outside. I'm just thinking mentally of how you doing this.
So that's a good question, and this is a little bit complicated. When you have large families, you don't typically put large families in buildings. As you saw, there'll be townhomes, there'll be single-story buildings, in that yellow area that I showed you.
The yellow area.
Those tend to be where we would put the larger families.
Oh, really?
That's the way we design things. Now, inside the different types of buildings,
Right.
you may see some use of,
Mixed income.
mixed
Gotcha.
into that. We
gotcha.
do. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we do things like within buildings. Sometimes there'll be 2-story units.
Okay.
So there might be 2 stories, 2 and 2 stacked. You have to
Right.
be careful about ADA, and because we have to be compliant with all ADA requirements. But there'll be a mixture. The idea is never to densify buildings that either are elevator or heavy walk-up with an
got you.
enormous number of children.
got you. Well,
But
that
there's going to be
makes-
children in
that-
every
that-
unit. This is a family development.
Well, that makes sense to me, because I was just concerned about putting people in one spot.
Well, you saw what we did at Robert Taylor. When we redid Robert Taylor, I don't think anything's more than 3 stories.
All that structure, where did the rest of the people go?
Well,
Yeah, you had
I hear
a
you.
lot
That's
of,
not,
lot of
don't,
people.
don't, you
Where
can't
did
look at
they
me
go?
on that one. Unfortunately.
Was that pushing them out?
Oh, no, what happened is the Housing Authority, before we got involved, tore the buildings down and gave people opportunities to move.
Yeah.
And then they were all given the right to move back.
Oh, they were.
And then what happens generally, it's not surprising, when somebody's, and it takes 2 or 3 years, somebody's living somewhere else for 2 or 3 years, they go, well, I like it here. So all the people that as of 1999 had residency at Robert Taylor before it was torn
Yeah.
down, were given opportunities to move back. And I think they were given 3 opportunities. So they,